All right, good evening, everybody. I'll call to order the July 8th, 2019 regular meeting of Council at 7 p.m. And I would also like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish People. I am looking for approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Jensen. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Public participation. I'd like to invite anyone present to take the opportunity to address Council, to present concerns or questions to Council. Comments pertaining to a matter that has been the subject of a public hearing are prohibited where the bylaws related to the matter have not been presented to Council for consideration or adoption. There is a maximum of 20 minutes allocated for public participation. Topics should be addressed briefly to allow other speakers the opportunity to address Council. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? And I know you know this, Chris, but when you get up, if you could also just tell us your name and your address, that'd be great.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm Chris Wright. I live at 3420 Mary Anne Crescent. I think tonight is July the 8th. And in my world, I don't know about this council's world, but in my world, July 8th is more than a few days after June 29th. And June 29th was a significant date for this council. But it seems to me that you all slept through it or you're ready to go to vacation. In British Columbia's community charter, you might find section 98, subsection 1, that states something to the nature of, before June 30th in each year, a council must prepare an annual report and make it available for public inspection. This evening, you have that on your agenda. Clearly, you've missed this deadline. Now, Mr. Mayor, I think I'm a reasonably decent taxpayer here in the city of Colwood. After all, I paid my bill, and it was on time. But I noticed at the bottom of that bill that there was a statement that there's a 10% penalty to citizens in Colwood who pay their taxes late. Since you and your council are late in releasing this year's annual report, will you do the honorable thing and return 10% of your annual salary to the city of Colwood?
Well, thank you, Chris. That's an interesting challenge. So I will leave that up to each individual councillor to address that with you. Yeah, please come on up.
My name is Pauline Hess. I live on Belmont Road, the Colwood side. And my husband and I frequent the lagoon quite often. We often walk down and sometimes we'll take the car, and we live at the bridge end, and there's no portable toilets there, so we have to walk a long way if we have to. So I would like to see a portable toilet closer to the bridge, and it's well used down there. There's a lot of people that go down there too. And another thing, another silly thing, but we've noticed there's an awful lot of cigarette butts everywhere. And I wondered if anybody had any ideas how we can, cut down the amount of cigarette butts. There doesn't seem to be anywhere to put them out, near the bus stops, for instance. So I don't know whether it's Colwood's thing to do that, or whether it's the transit buses that need to do that. But I didn't see anywhere they can put their butts out. But they're all in the gutters, they're everywhere, and they don't go away.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the porta potties, I know what we could do is we'll definitely speak to staff about, I don't know if we have it in the budget to have more this year, but we may be able to reallocate them and move them around a bit, because I believe there's two that sit down by sort of in the middle section where we have the food trucks on the Fridays. As for the cigarette butts, I know our director of Development Services is making notes, so we'll sort of see if what we can do around the bus stops. So thank you. Is there any? Yep.
I am also living nearly in Colwood for the last 3 years. Thoroughly enjoy very much living in Colwood and on Belmont Road. The site we are living on is Colwood, a across the road is the D&D. The D&D has all sidewalks and things along that road. On our side, we have some wonderful sidewalks, and I assume that developers are required to do that. But we are in the 300 block, and the 2800 block has wonderful sidewalks. The 300 block has wonderful sidewalks. The 2900 block is a virtual mess with the ditches and which gather wind-blown garbage and all that. Next to us are being built a new apartment block, so we assume there's going to be another 50 extra cars, which I would suggest you look into having that block developed either for sidewalks or additional street parking.
Okay, thank you. Hey there.
I'm Liz Ford, and this is my husband, Mike Ford, and this is our first time at a city council meeting, so I hope we do okay.
Nice shirts.
Yes, Mike got the memo, not me. Anyway, we are a team, not just in our marriage, but we also own 2 local businesses, and one is a design business, and one is a kind of a luxury accommodation business as well. In addition to that, we are entrepreneurs. We want to start a 3rd business, and that is I'll bring this to Mike.
Well, for starters, I want to clarify that we live on Aloha.
Oh, yes, sorry, I forgot that part. Fail already.
Also fitting for the evening, I think.
Yes.
But so the third, the idea that we had was that we'd like to see, we'd like to open a food truck style coffee cup. The concept basically is the idea behind it would be a giant coffee cup located in the lagoon, because we're lagoon.
We live there.
Yeah, we live there, residents.
Yeah.
But basically just serving sort of the morning commuter as well as the morning beach walkers, dog walkers, everyone that's right there in the lagoon. As well as it being portable, we'd deliver it every morning and have coffee service from the cup for a period of time in the morning, starting with the business week, and then maybe as people or demand requires, we'd move into the weekend. But as we stand right now, from our early conversations with just like town employees, is that there is no real permit or any sort of legislation in place for us to be able to do that. And we're just asking tonight that council have their staff look into potentially what it's going to take before we go and invest in fabrication and design work on something like this, be it that it's a little specialized. We just kind of thought it'd be best that we bring it before you guys.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely bring up the discussion with staff, and then we'll see what staff says back to us, and they'll probably bring it back as a council.
Yeah, I will just quickly add that we are action oriented. This is not just conceptualized. It is something that we've done a lot of business planning for, and we do think that we're ready to move kind of when we're available to.
Excellent.
We're doers. Anyway.
Well, I appreciate the entrepreneurial spirit. Well done.
We're also new to Colwood as of 3 years, so that's
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, come on.
Hi, just briefly, Rachel Sansom, 1498 White Pine Terrace. I'm here to speak to item 8.2 on the agenda this evening. If anybody has any questions when that comes up, please let me know. I'll be happy to help you out. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Diane Reed. I live at 3344 Fulton Road on Triangle Mountain. I have 3 things I'd like to address. Firstly is the new ferry proposal. I am all for it. I used to live in Sydney, Australia. They had quite an array of ferries that went from point A to point B, and it worked extremely well. I like the idea that we could go to work. I'm retired actually, but I could go to the theater, or people from Victoria could come to Colwood and go to Judith's new auditorium that she's going to build, something along that line. But I I'm glad that you're working on it, and I think it'll put Colwood on the map, doing something along that line. When I lived in Australia and took the ferry, it didn't necessarily save time or money, but it's the experience, the fact that you could read a book, relax, and get to your destination, relaxed to work, or just coming home relaxed. So those items are not necessarily going to benefit, but it may get more people off the roads. Secondly, I just skimmed the annual report. I could not find anything in there in regards to looking after older neighborhoods, in regards to sidewalks, such as this gentleman pointed out, or lighting, markings on the road, anything to improve our communities. I've lived in Triangle Mountain for 15 years. I have really not seen any improvements on our mountain, and there's a lot of people that live there. And I know our dollars have to be stretched to go many different directions, but I do feel that it's time now that we saw something up on our area. I asked for a light at the bottom of Fulton Road. I asked for 2 lights, actually, and I finally got one so people could find Fulton Road. They put in a dim bulb. I finally got a bright bulb, and so it's a little bit better, but really, it's a safety issue, and that should have been addressed 8 years ago. My third point is I've watched women try and push carriages up Fulton Road in the ditch. So I have a real issue when the city is spending money on environmental issues that have nothing to do with our tax dollars. Environmental issues are handled by the province and by the federal government. We spend dollars of our tax dollars go to them for environmental issues. I don't mind us doing things to improve our community, but I really don't want to see city time, staff time spent on these issues when we don't even have sidewalks. So all I'm saying is, could you focus on safety issues, policing, sidewalks, lighting, proper lighting? I don't think it's fair that me as a citizen has to come and phone your staff and say, do you know that there are 11 lights that don't work in downtown Colwood? That shouldn't be my job. But all I'm saying is that things are being left by the wayside. I really like the new council we have, and I like the staff. They have a much better attitude than before. I think now is a time for change and renewal, and I would like to see that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, councillors, my name is Bob Harris, and I live at 154 Milburn Drive. And my wife sent a text yesterday to the hall asking if you councillors had time to drive by and have a look at that building that's going up on Milburn Drive. Is there any of you that didn't have an opportunity? I have some pictures here. Could I pass them around? Would that be okay?
Sure, yeah, you may.
When we came to a meeting a while back, and it was to do with the sidewalks. Basically, the builders were concerned about what Colwood was making them do with sidewalks. And since then, we'd heard nothing about the variances. And your staff told me today that we were mailed letters. Well, none of us got them, or we'd have been here a lot sooner. The home that's going up is totally out of character. I think it's lowering our present values of our properties. I've been there 27 years. There's a person across the street was there before me, and he's just looking at this monstrous building that's totally out of character. And we're hoping that it's not too late, that something can be done.
I will, I mean, obviously we'd need to look at staff, and we'll need to pull the file and all that. So we definitely can do that. And have you spoken to staff recently in the last week or two, it sounds like?
I was here on Thursday, and I was here today.
Okay.
And I had a look at the plans, and the plans, when the lady came to my door when she was wanting our support, she told me that the house would not be above the house on the corner that she bought also. There's a little peak on it. Well, it's way above that. And to my way of thinking, she hasn't been quite truthful with us on what's going on there. And then there was going to be one garage, now there's two, and they've shifted the property to our neighbors, close to the house next to us.
Well, I think what we can do for you is we'll definitely have staff look at it. Staff can report back to council as well. And if they're doing something that they're not authorized to do, bylaw would certainly be stepping in. And I know bylaw will, my director of development services is shaking his head. So it sounds like that's already, yeah. Are you just agreeing, or are you telling me the bylaws? Okay, good. So yeah, we'll have a look at it and we'll follow up. Somebody will follow up with you this week, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Jerry Malota. I live at 151 Milburn Street, and I have few concerns. I lived that area for 50 years, and we have tremendous view until now. Till this monster apartment building is built. They call it a residence, but looks like apartment. And to my knowledge, because I have experience in 45 years in the construction business, the building is too high. According to the original plan, it shows the measurement from slope from the street, but that's not right because the original land was completely flat. So if that has to be the measurement up to 29 feet, it's more than that. I never see anybody come to the job site from city to inspect actual construction. The original plan shows from the neighbor on the left side, supposed to be 4 meters to the new building. But now it's only 1.5 meters. So there were several changes which the public from around that neighborhood wasn't knowledge. So I would like to find out who's responsible for the inspections.
Well, what I can tell you is, obviously you put this on our radar now, and I guarantee you staff will be looking at it and they'll be reporting back to make sure that they're meeting with what they're supposed to be doing. So we'll be able to find that information out for you.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Hello, my name's Lisa Pinero, and I live at 152 Milburn. I'm in agreement with the past 2 comments. We live right behind the building. They are 1.5 meters away from us now. I don't believe the owner was truthful. She did come to us as well and said her roof line would not be any higher than her existing building. I think so that we wouldn't protest. I'm a little annoyed that she keeps approaching us to remove our hedge and to share a driveway. And it's ridiculous. I think it needs to be looked at. I want it inspected. I want to know if we're allowed to know the results. And yeah, I want to make sure that, something needs to be done. Yeah. It's horrible. And I feel for the few houses that are directly affected because I believe their houses have been devalued, and it's not fair at all. The city of Colwood is supposed to protect our community and the people, and I don't feel this was done. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just repeat myself that staff will follow up. So, go ahead.
Good evening. Mike Henderson, 3338 Anchorage Avenue. I live and have for 30 years right next door to the aforementioned structure. For me, it's not exactly interfering with my view unless I look to the west, where it is totally taken over the horizon. Further, it has totally removed any privacy I may have in my backyard. And it does look like an apartment building. I came to meetings when the owner came before council appealing for variances, and I think there's a total of 3 variances. All of them significant. A reduction in the lot size. You change the zoning from hillside shoreline to residential, which essentially doubles the density. They also got a variance to reduce the setback from the street significantly by several meters. It was just brought to my attention the other day by Jerry that the plan has changed. And the owners lied to us as well. They told us the same thing, that it would not be above the height of the existing structure, and this was all, I think, to placate us. An example of, as far as I'm concerned, an example of just because you maybe or maybe can do something doesn't mean you should. This house really is out of place. We talked about it a lot, yet they got all the variances they wanted. And I don't know what other variance they are applying for with regards to street improvements. But I know that they at one time were negotiating with the city about that as well. So they've gotten everything that they've asked for and some, and it is having a very negative impact at several levels on all of the immediate neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, you're probably getting tired of hearing this. 152 Milburn Drive, right next to the monstrosity that I would like, when you have time, if you could just drive down Milburn. Don't come up down through Lagoon. Go down Milburn. I'm the little walk-in bungalow, gray with a red door, and you'll see what we're all talking about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Frank Verdi. I'm also for 152 Milburn. I agree with all what they said, but I'm here on another, since I take the opportunity to bring another issue up.
Sure.
I used to walk the lagoons years ago, and I stopped for whatever reason. And it was disgusting then with the condoms being thrown on the ground there. I've restarted walking the lagoon with my grandson. We're helping each other get fit. Same thing. People are still throwing condoms on the where the people park on the lagoon. That's still happening, and I don't know if anybody has ever mentioned it. The crew goes there every day. I guess picks it up. I don't know, but
yeah, we do. Yeah, thank you. It is unfortunate. I mean, we do have a public works staff go down there almost every day to clear garbage and to pick up and clear as much. It's just disappointing that the general public isn't a little more respectful of that. I'm not sure what we can do as a council other than to be sending staff down to try and do it as best we can. And we'll try and do some education as well. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to 4, Mayor's Message. Oh, there we go. As you're probably all aware, or you can see, we're all wearing Hawaiian shirts this evening. And that the whole idea is that this is our last council meeting until August 20th, I believe, and so we're sort of celebrating this summer. Hence the reason we're dressed as we are. I'd also just like to remind everybody that we do have Beach Food Fridays and Saturdays at the Colwood waterfront that continues on. This Friday, the Soul Shakers are playing, and on Saturday, the Smiley Brothers are there. So come on down for that. July 20th, there is an event at Fort Rod Hill to learn how to camp. So if you need some help camping, you can go down to Fort Rod Hill and learn how to do it. July 20th as well is also the Eats and Beats Festival that we've got going. That's going to be happening from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. We have 6 live bands scheduled, street food festival, a beer garden. Councillor Logan, a beer garden? Craft beer garden for Councillor Logan. A street market, a climbing wall, which I'm very excited about. That's going to be very cool. We've got kayaking and some stand-up paddling and other amazing events. So that's going to be a spectacular day. I also heard today, I was listening to CFAX, and I was speaking to our communications officer about this, that CFAX is advertising this quite widely, and I learned that they are actually one of our partners with CTV, and so that's fantastic that we're getting a lot of publicity now down there. I believe last year it was about 8,000 attendees throughout the day, and we're expecting that number to be even larger this year. There's a Sunset Cinema happening at the Wanda Fuca Rec Center on July 22nd, and it's the Lego Movie, Part 2. So if you enjoy the Lego movies, bring your kids down for that. And then finally, there is a camp-in movie night at Fort Red Hill happening July 27th, which will be The Princess Bride, which is a classic movie. Yeah, that's a really good movie. As well, finally, it's over a month away, so I hesitated to say anything, but our intern CAO, this is actually his last council meeting. So we very much appreciate, Chris, that you have stepped up and been with us for the last 6 months. It's been a real honor to work with you. I know this council is better off for the efforts and time and energy that you've invested. I also know the city, the employees have really blossomed with your support, and just very much thank you for being here with us for this last little while, and it's great to have you, and we'll probably get you back in, what is it, the 8th time in about 3 years. So. Before I move on, is there anyone else that has anything that they'd like to share? Councillor Day.
Thank you. It's a sad bit of news, and we did mention it at our last Committee of the Whole, but I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Sooke Councillor Brenda Parkinson, who was on council since 2005, and then again this last term, and after a very short battle with brain cancer, has passed away. Seeing nobody else, I'm going to move on. 5, adoption, receipt of minutes. 5.1, regular council meeting minutes of June 24th. Moved by Councillor Jensen, seconded by Councillor Logan. Any errors, omissions, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of June 3rd. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Jensen. Errors, omissions, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of June 17th, 2019.
Move receipt, Your Worship.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan. Second by Councillor Parkinson. Errors, omissions, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.1, we have a presentation from our MLA, Mitzi Dean.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, residents of Colwood. I'd like to start by recognising that we're honoured to be gathered here today on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, now known as the Esquimalt and Songhees. And I'd also like to acknowledge Chianu as well at Beecher Bay. I represent all of those communities, and for me it's really important that we share that honour, and also that we consciously make sure every action that we take, particularly in our roles of leadership, is one of reconciliation. I'm Mitzi Dean. I'm the MLA for Esquimalt Machosen, and that includes View Royal and Colwood, and Songhees, Esquimalt and Chianu, and also the base as well. Speaking to some new residents here this evening, it was important to kind of fill in the gaps there. And I'm also the Parliamentary Secretary for Gender Equity, and I go by the pronouns of she, her. And I'd like to start by honouring and thanking all of you, Mayor and Council, for all of your work and your service to our community. Thank you so much for everything you do. And wow, this is fun looking at you in all those colours. And I'm here to talk about the budget and about the economy. So this feels really uplifting. So I'm talking about budget 2019. So to start off with, just a summary of the BC economic outlook. Our economic forecast as a government is actually very prudent, and we adjust it at quarterly intervals as we actually get the actuals reported back in. We're led by the Economic Forecast Council, so we make sure that our forecast is actually very prudent. But actually, British Columbia is seeing the best economic performance and has the best economic outlook of all of the provinces across the whole of the country. So the forecast annual growth in 2019 is 2.4% for British Columbia. The Canadian average is 1.8, and the closest to us is 1.9 in Newfoundland. And for 2020, the forecast annual growth is 2.7, with the Canadian average again being 1.8, and Alberta being at 2.4. Now, things are taking a bit of a turn globally, so those figures will be adjusted as and when we get up-to-date information. But we continue to have the lowest rate of unemployment in the country. And as I'm sure you'll be aware, ever since we took government in 2017, we've had a balanced budget every year, and budget 2019 is, again, a balanced budget. And the theme of budget 2019 is making life better. Budget 2019 puts people first. It takes action to make life more affordable, improve services, and build a strong, sustainable economy. And we're making life better for British Columbians by creating the BC Child Opportunity Benefit, fully eliminating MSP premiums, reducing the tax burden on middle-class British Columbians and businesses, investing in infrastructure and job creation, making a historic investment to advance reconciliation, and moving forward with Clean BC to meet our climate commitments. So the BC Child Opportunity Benefit, I'm just going to run through some of these with a little bit more detail, is to give kids more opportunities and to give families some relief. It actually comes into effect in October 2020, and it annually provides up to $1,600 for one child and $3,400 for 3 children. And one of the things that's really important for families in our community is, whereas the child benefit at the moment stops at age 6, this is available for children up to the age of 18. So if you actually look at a family life cycle, that is really significant. We're eliminating MSP premiums. That's actually creating 2.7 billion savings annually. And as you can see, that would obviously save families a significant amount of money a year as well. We're creating $800 million in business tax reductions, and we're doing this because it supports a strong competitive position in the manufacturing and processing sector. And we're also helping small businesses by cutting the small business corporate income tax rate from 2.5% to 2%. And as of April this year, we have eliminated PST for business on non-residential electricity. And that is saving businesses in British Columbia about $150 million annually. And we're also investing in BC. We have an infrastructure spending budget that totals $20 billion. We are investing in schools, roads, hospitals, post-secondary institutions, and that, of course, supports tens of thousands of jobs as well. And let's look around locally. What do we see? We see an expansion at Royal Bay High School. Royal Bay High School is going to be the largest high school on the whole of Vancouver Island. What else? Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for your support. We're building accommodation here in Colwood. We're filling holes. We're creating family-centered, really diverse opportunities for people to come and live, work, and play in Colwood. So we opened Helios just recently. We have the Indigenous housing coming, and tomorrow we have another exciting announcement as well. So thank you. That collaboration is really effective. And I'm also really proud that we are going to have the very first transition house come to West Shore as well. We haven't had a transition house here in our community until now. We're also investing in skills training. You'll know about our historic investments in childcare as well. Childcare, of course, is really important in supporting the economy, helping the local economy grow, and closing the wage gap between men and women as well in employment. Just a couple of final points. We have made a historic step forward in reconciliation by revenue sharing with First Nations across the whole of the province. We're providing stable long-term funding of over $3 billion over 25 years. And that allows for communities through self-determination, self-direction to invest in health, wellness, infrastructure, housing, economic development, whatever their community needs. And finally, we're putting our province on the path to a cleaner, better future through a historic $902 million investment in Clean BC. That facilitates programs like increasing incentives for electric cars, increasing grants for affordable infrastructure and upgrades to residential accommodation, as well as we're investing in public buildings as well to make sure that we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as well, and supporting Indigenous and remote communities transitioning to cleaner energy sources. So we're going to continue to be a leader with our economy in the future across the country. We're going to continue to have a balanced budget, and at the same time, we're going to make life more affordable. We're going to create the opportunity for everyone to fulfill their potential, and we are building a strong economy and putting BC on the path to a sustainable future. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mitzi. I will look to Council. Council, is there any questions? Oh, it looked like you nailed it. Thank you. Moving on then, 7.1, correspondence requiring council directive, Robert Lapham, Chief Administrative Officer from the Capital Regional District, regarding the regional concept of operations and supporting Memorandum of Understanding. The Regional Emergency Management Partnership, REMP, are looking to create a regional concept of operations for the Capital Region, which is a mechanism or system that will outline how local governments, First Nations, and the province will work together during events of regional emergency significance. What is the will of council? We can just receive it if there isn't anything else. Oh, so I will look to staff. Thank you. That's what the staff's recommendation is. So moved. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Kobayashi. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 8.1, Development Variance Permit Application DVP 19009262 Portsmouth Drive. I am declaring a conflict of interest because this property borders my property.
Hurry up, Rob.
I'll hurry up. Sorry. Keep it.
Hello, my name is Alex Baxter. I reside at 262 Portsmouth Drive, and I'm here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. This was before Committee of the Whole.
I move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Logan, Councillor Kobayashi. And any questions for the applicant or any questions for staff? Anybody? I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? None opposed? You get all that? I think you're good.
Thank you very much.
I think is the next one also Portsmouth Drive? Okay. Wilford Road, okay.
La la la. We are now on to 8.2, development variance permit application number DVP 19004, 2676 Wilford Road. This development variance permit has been requested to relax the minimum allowed number of off-street parking stalls at 2676 Wilford Road. Does council have any questions for staff? And I know we also have the proponent here. Seeing none? Oh, I'm sorry, Stuart.
Sorry, Rachel, hi. Long time no see. Can you, and I'm sorry I missed the first presentation here. Can you give me a brief rundown what's going on this whole property and how this fits in with what's going on with the rest of the property?
Yeah, so essentially there was interest expressed by the CRD and BC Housing about doing an affordable housing project on the property. There's no actual contract in place, but it was for their due diligence. They wanted to ensure the number of parking spaces so they could do their pro forma work and cost out a potential building on the site. So they asked us to proceed with a variance. So it would only apply to a small section of the site. We don't actually have any development plans for the balance of the site that are concrete right now. So we're looking at various options, and there's always different things going on in the background. But for now, we're focusing on this particular potential use. So in consultation with staff, we worked with Watt Consulting, and their model is it's 50% market housing, and then the rest is stratified, assisted, and fully subsidized housing. They go anywhere from like small studio suites to 2-bedroom units. So our parking study recommended a blend of parking spaces that were appropriate. And again, with guidance from staff, the 1.2 per unit was decided to be an appropriate number for this use, given the proximity to transit, the Galloping Goose, and the rising interest in things like electric bicycles and car share, that would be an appropriate number. So again, it's a planning tool more so than a physical number of cars on the site. We'd still come in with a development permit for the building should it come to fruition. So there's still several steps to go through. This is more finding a level of comfort with what sort of parking would be appropriate in this area for this particular use.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe I can go to staff on this one, because it seems like sometimes we get in situations where we're dealing with approvals that have been granted for projects that then evolve or change. So we're in a situation here where it sounds like they're chasing a project and they want to know how many parking stalls they're going to have to build if they build that project. And they have a reasonable number that probably everybody's quite happy with. But if that project doesn't come to fruition, but we've got this variance for the parking, are we then stuck with that variance no matter what somebody builds on that? Or where does this go to? How do we make sure we don't get ourselves in a box here?
Through your worship, yes, the variance is only attributed to a certain aspect of this property, but once the variance is provided, it's provided regardless of the end use. So that aspect of the property where the variance is provided would continue to be applied, therefore, forever after.
So, if I may, is there a mechanism where we can say, go chase this project, if you get this project, we're happy with this parking ratio, but only for that project, and if that project doesn't evolve or doesn't come to fruition, it's not a blanket reduction in parking?
Through your worship, I think the covenant may place, or the council may place a restriction on the land. It would be due to it'd be more of a question to me about the applicability of that when they didn't know the end use, and it may be better off to say, well, then bring us the end use and we'll talk about it then. If it was specific, you could place a covenant or restriction on the land that says, yes, this use specific to that housing type and no other housing type would have that variance applied. But there may not be a value in that in terms of enforceability. I think that when the parking study was provided, it was provided as an overview of the area, considering the other land uses in question. It was based in part of the CRD's uptake, but it was predicated on right-sizing the parking or presumption of right-sizing the parking for a use, which was then qualified to also apply to the CRD. So I think that if council felt that that number was too low, that we could have it reconsidered, or too high, that we could have it reconsidered, or not applicable, and then I would say that we shouldn't pass the variance.
Yeah, so I guess I have to say I'm just not comfortable here to give this that's on a spec project to say, here's a change, because, you know, they're saying we may do this project, and if they do this project, I'm quite happy with the parking ratio. But what we're saying is anybody can do any project, and that's the parking ratio. Those are two different things.
I'm going to go to Councillor Baxter, then Day.
I've seen a lot of variances come through council that had conditions on. So you actually put the conditions on the variance. And the problem is to create a condition that actually satisfies what you want. So I don't know whether, you know, you could say, you could try and add a condition to this variance saying that this variance only applies to any project that has this much of all the different types of housing that are going to be on this site, and describe it that way. It's up to you, really.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I am not comfortable with this variance coming forward for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that we don't really know what's coming forward. The other reason is that I've had conversations recently with a number of both businesses and residents who live in this area of Colwood, and parking is becoming increasingly an issue in the area. And my concern is that allowing a variance to go forward without looking at the area as a whole is really problematic, because this is one of Colwood's downtown core areas. So if we end up approving, you know, non-market housing and market housing in such a way that we don't leave enough room for commercial parking for commercial endeavors, that this is going to become a much less attractive area for businesses. And I think that is really important to Colwood, that this develop commercially as well as for other projects, like not strictly for that, but in order for it to be a really viable area for Colwood, I think we need a little bit of everything here. And we have had a lot of projects coming forward for affordable housing, which is awesome, really needed and super important. But then we also need the other uses that complement that to come in. So I'm just really feeling like I'm not ready to pull the trigger on this until we look at the bigger picture.
Thank you. Councillor Logan. Thank you, Worship. Getting back to Councillor Parkinson's point about the specificness of this resolution, I think we had a similar conversation at the Committee of the Whole meeting about the specific site, and I think that's why we added Section C that narrowed it down to that specific 144-unit non-market rental housing that's shown on the plan. So if something else was to be planned for that particular site, then based on C, they would have to come back to committee and council for a parking reduction, right? But the parking reduction that we're talking about tonight is absolutely specific to a project of 144 non-market rental housing units on that piece of property on Wilford Road.
Through your worship, I believe you're correct. Item C makes it specific. So when you combine it to the drawings, and it says the variance is specific to the 144, so theoretically if it was 142 or 145, it doesn't fit that description. Non-market rental housing, so if it was market, it wouldn't meet that description. Right. As shown on the attached drawings, would not meet that description. Correct.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Parkinson.
Firstly, I apologize that I hadn't picked up on that. I guess there's a lot of stuff here. As I said, I was away. So that does help me, although I don't think we're talking 144 unit non-market rental housing, are we? Isn't half rental, half market, and half non-market?
Yes, through your worship, there was a split that we could also define by way of covenant or within the variance that would split it into the percentages.
Do we know what those are?
I believe it is. I think it's 49% market, and then the other 51% are broken down. I could get that information to staff. I don't know if that appears in the report, but there's a specific model that the CRD and BC Housing use all the time, and forgive me for not knowing those numbers at this point, but we could certainly provide those to you.
So I think we probably need that, don't we? Like we don't want to start out by saying it's something that isn't what's proposed. So maybe we should table this until we get that split, and we could make C to the variances specific to whatever the split is.
Good.
Through your worship, it feels as though this consideration is specific to our CRD use, which is not mentioned in it, although the report that was provided for traffic did predicate it, that consideration on that use and eventuality. And Mrs. Sansom, is spoken about that pending deal and that market share and split that is enabled by CRD. The variance itself is not specific as it's written to a CRD housing project, which would allow a similar sort of density and a similar sort of look to fit this description. So I don't believe council should make a recommendation specific to a CRD, because we can't control or predicate the end purchaser of this unit if CRD ends up walking from this deal.
So I guess I'll chime in. I'm supportive if the project was to move forward and the CRD was to build what has been proposed, I would be supportive of this project, and I would be supportive of looking at this. I am not going to support this evening because I don't know what I'm looking at. Right now I'm being asked to look at a raw piece of land and just give a parking variance to it without any commitment of the owners of bringing back to council what they're proposing that they would like to see built there. And I think this is a premature question. I understand why the CRD wants to do this. I understand why every possible purchaser would want to ensure that they're getting a parking variance to meet their needs. I want to be very clear that I would be supporting this if this comes in front of this council in the future, but I will not be supporting it this evening because I do not have a project in front of me. So that's where that's what I will be doing. But I will look to council. We will need some sort of motion.
I move the recommendation.
You're going to move the recommendation. Thank you. I need a seconder to the recommendation. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jensen. Any discussion? Councillor Parkinson?
How can you move the recommendation when you know it's wrong to start with? I mean, nobody here is asking for a 144-unit non-market rental project. We've already discussed it's partly market and partly non-market, and we don't know exactly what that is. Now, maybe we can find some wording to say variance is specific to the market, non-market rental housing as proposed, some wording, but I don't get it. But right now, to pass this motion when it's not what they're asking for doesn't seem sensible.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
If we pass this motion, we have given a strong indication to the CRD that we support this in principle. If that description doesn't fit what they want to build, then they have to come back. I think that satisfies everything.
Okay, Councillor Jensen.
And much of this discussion was had with Ms. Sansom here last time. I asked these specific questions, and she framed an answer that gave me some comfort, and maybe we can ask her to chime in on this and at least give us some of the thoughts on the development side.
Yes, again, through your worship. Again, this particular building would fall into their model, and I think that a variance could probably speak to this very specific, again, piece of land and the very specific use, that it would have an affordable housing component of, 50%, because that seems to be the piece that actually needs to be varied more than anything. As a consultant to the client, I'm feeling like a lot of comfort with where council wants to go with this, but I understand that there's some nuances that maybe aren't fitting perfectly right now. So if you would like me to come back with more information, I have no problem with that. I do appreciate everybody's time and thought into this, because it is a little bit off the wall. I agree. It's, we don't have anything really concrete to look at, and I do appreciate that. So, I'm happy to keep working with everybody on that. I don't have that. I wish I could remember what I said at the meeting.
It was really good.
That was so brilliant. Oh, should have written it down.
So it was along the line. We framed. There was concerns about the property right next door assumed some existing covenants, and there was some carryover from an old project. And our concern was whether when you come back the project changes, and there was some clarity that no, this variance would live with that, whatever that specific building and that location is, which is why we agreed with some specificity as far as the I believe that what you said gave me comfort, if that's any comfort. And I at the time was comfortable with it, as was Councillor Baxter, and I still am. I think there's enough checks and balances that if there is a change, it has to come back. It has to come back for development permits. There's a lot of layers of approval that are before us here. I think it's a conceptual project. I get it, and we don't have maps and drawings, but I think that there's enough to at least move forward and explore this.
Thank you. If there's no other discussion, I'm going to call the question. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Councillor Day, Councillor Kobayashi, Mayor Martin, Councillor Parkinson are in the negative, so the motion does not pass.
Thank you.
Does but nothing stops her coming back with more information, does it? No, it's not one of those, that doesn't mean she can't come back for 6 months.
I think you're clear on where our messaging was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
We're good. 8.3 Royal Bay Waterfront Passenger Ferry Pre-Feasibility Study. The Committee of the Whole discussed the BC Ferries pre-feasibility study for a potential passenger ferry service from the Royal Bay waterfront to downtown Victoria. Does Council have any questions for staff?
I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Moved by... Oh, yeah.
I'll second it.
We'll move
there
it, and then
you
I'll go to questions. So moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Jensen. Questions? Councillor Kobayashi?
Yes, I'm sorry I missed the whole discussion on this. I was away doing something more important. Sorry about that. So my question is, I know exactly what they're doing, but what is the resource cost of this right now? Was that discussed? What this is going to take on our part right now from the staff point of view?
I don't believe it was discussed. Unfortunately, I wasn't there as well at the Committee of the Whole meeting. I will look to staff. I don't know if we talked about resourcing.
No, there's nothing to do with resourcing and nothing to do with money. The actual discussion was more around the province's South Island transportation study that's underway, in which this is a part of the study. We're waiting for the results of that, which should come out in 2020. And that if the province then supports the study, then we get into some of the more detailed requirements. But for staff at the moment, there's no load on staff. The developer at Royal Bay already understands that we would like a ferry terminal there. They've got it in their plans, but they've got it interchangeable, that if it doesn't go ahead, they just swap it out in terms of a revised design.
Thank you.
Councillor Day?
Thank you. There was also considerable discussion, and I believe Councillor Parkinson was the one who brought it up, that this does really impact our planning for development in terms of road infrastructure, that, you know, if we're having a ferry, great, then we need to plan for having a ferry. And if we're not having a ferry, then we need to plan for how else people are getting around. So that was definitely a major consideration, because it leaves us in a very difficult position when we don't know in terms of, well, what else are we going to do then? If we don't have a ferry, how are people moving around our community in a way that doesn't turn into gridlock?
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Yeah, just to expand on that, I've come to the conclusion we have no choice but to plan for no ferry and make sure the roads take it, because I don't think the zonings that are coming at us are going to wait for the several years for a final decision on whether a ferry would go, however optimistic everybody may wish to be, or you know, even if everybody's full steam ahead, there's still a heck of a process to go through, and I don't think that things are going to wait. So I think that just by definition means that we're going to have to plan for no ferry and make sure that the traffic will work if there's no ferry. My sense is if there is a ferry, it's going to lessen traffic, might change some of the directions, may make some impacts. I guess we're going to have to deal with those when they're in front of us.
Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, I think when we think about how many people this ferry will take off the roads, we have to remember that this ferry, like the one in Vancouver, the sea bus, it looks like a part of the transit network, really, more than, you know, the ferry to Prince Rupert, for instance.
Right.
And it's people are have the motivation to travel by transit or bike or whatever, that are going to be quite likely to take it up in larger numbers. So the number of drivers that will get out of the cars, I wouldn't be too optimistic about that. But I just want to repeat, because you weren't there, Your Worship, at the meeting, my concerns about putting 250 parking spots in Royal Beach. And Councillor Dean actually mentioned in a conversation this week the idea that we would park those cars somewhere else, for instance, in our property further down Majosen Road, and then there'd be a shuttle bus to get them to the terminal. And I would far rather see that than that we lose 70,000 square feet of buildable area and taxable area to a car park, which, as I pointed out at the time, it'll be first come, first serve. Okay, well, the ferry takes 250 passengers, 2 or 3 ferry rides, and it's full. And those people are probably there all day because they're on their way to work. And so then that parking lot services no other passengers until those people come back from work and take their cars away. So I don't think the parking lot is that useful. I think an improved bus system is going to be the only thing that really feeds this well. Although looking at the numbers of dwellings we'll have within walking distance, that could be a fair chunk of it too. But I just want to repeat my concern. I'll vote for this, but I want to repeat my concern about putting that parking there.
Thank you. The only thing that I'll say about this is, right now, this was about principles from a standpoint of, do we believe that we want a ferry? Because if we didn't want a ferry, if this council came out and said, listen, we are 100% against the idea of a ferry, then there was no point of me pursuing it or anything else. There are a whole host of things that we're going to have to address as we move through this, and there are going to be a lot of roadblocks. And we're going to have to get through parking, we're going to have to get through environmental issues, we're going to have to get through a whole host of issues. But I wanted to make sure that this council was at least on board from a standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, that they liked the idea. I was speaking with Mayor Helps today. Mayor Helps is very excited about the idea as well. She's going to be putting the exact same motion that this council is voting on tonight to her council in the next little while to continue to build the momentum, to demonstrate to the province that the municipalities are supportive of this idea and are prepared to try and move this forward. It was really important that we got this in front of us now to say to the province before the study comes out if we were supportive or not supportive. So I understand this is a long process, and as Councillor Parkinson has laid out, in the best case scenario, we're looking at about 9 months for the full feasibility study to be complete. Once that full feasibility study is completed, we're probably looking at about 36 months to completely build it out, from breakwater to getting the boats ordered and everything else. So we're looking at a 4 or 5 year window if we're quick. And so this isn't a short term, hey, we're going to fix things for tomorrow. This is a long-term vision, and we're going to have to modify as we understand what our traffic patterns and how they change once we know something is or is not going to happen. But also, let me be blunt that when the South Island Transportation Study Initiative comes out in the winter of 2020, if the province chooses not to spend $1 million to fund the full feasibility study, the ferry, for the most part, is dead. If we cannot get the province to buy and to actually consider investing into this, then it's going to be really clear to us. So we're going to have a fairly clear idea. Just because they do fund it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it gives us an indication that the province is ready and willing to move forward. So I think we'll see that come this winter. We'll have a fairly clear idea if this idea is moving forward from a provincial standpoint. We do have some other irons in the fire as well, which I'm not privy to discuss in public yet, but there'll be other options if for some reason this fails. But that's hence the reason why I wanted to make sure that we brought it to this table so that we had at least a principled discussion about if we like the idea of a ferry or not. So that, and I do appreciate that there's a whole bunch of work that needs to happen in behind. I am looking for a recommendation. Do we have one? Did somebody move it already? Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Day?
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly add that my point at Committee of the Whole was really about that it's really important that this is a part of a transit system and not just a giant parking lot for people to leave their cars looking at the waterfront all day. I think it's really critical that the province gets on board with helping us to design a transit system that is really functional and can help people to not have to rely on their vehicles.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Unanimous. Moving on to 8.4, flag policy. Flag protocol has been created to provide a balanced approach, ensuring that flags at city facilities are flown and displayed in a consistent manner. Does council have any questions for staff regarding this? If not, oh, sorry.
I'll move recommendation.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Jensen, seconded by Councillor Logan. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.5, Corporate Communications Manager regarding the draft 2018 annual report. I do have one comment just before that happens, and unfortunately Mr. Wright left, but I have been informed by staff that the community charter does require that we make the annual report available to the public prior to June 30th. It also requires that council receive the report receives the report at a public meeting a minimum of 14 days after it has been made available to the public. Through staff, council made the report available to the public on June 17th online. Ads in the newspaper were purchased on June 21st and the June 28th to bring the attention to the public about the annual report. Today, we are just receiving the annual report in this public meeting within the time frame specific in the charter. Saying that, the City of Colwood draft 2018 annual report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018 has been prepared for Council's consideration of approval. Does council have any questions for staff? Councillor Parkinson? Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm good to go. So in the mayor's comments, he says, we have put a new focus on the value of natural and built assets that will ensure stable and predictable tax rates for future generations with the Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Plan.
That
Now,
sounds good.
Doesn't it? What a brilliant man. But my understanding is that we had a fabulous report on the sustainable infrastructure and how it could be financed. And that we looked at that, and we did, in fact, I think, make the first year's contribution. But I don't think we committed to going fully down that path of the sustainable infrastructure financing, that there's some real issues that I think as a council we need to wrap our heads around and decide if we're going there and how aggressively and things like that. So I think here, and also perhaps in the manager of finance or director of finances thing, that again, it just used language that made it sound like that was a commitment this council had made, and I'm not sure it's one that we have made, or frankly that we can made to commit councils up 12 years in the future to raise taxes. So
we do have it under review. Yeah, it's absolutely, you're absolutely correct that I believe it comes back for review. Thank you.
I'll move.
Oh, did you want to comment?
I'll move recommendation, Your Worship.
Second. Thank you. I move by Councillor Jensen, second by Councillor Logan. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.6, Corporate Communication Manager regarding the PAC bottle bin request at the Lagoon. Request was made in January by the Sangster School Parent Advisory Council to have bottle bins for fundraising efforts for local elementary schools on the Lagoon. There is a recommendation, but if council has questions for staff, please feel free.
I'll move the recommendation. So
thank you.
Second.
Councillor Baxter, moved by seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion. Councillor Jensen, then Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did read this. I am going to support it, but I did have a question, more so for staff perhaps, but next week are the Girl Guides going to put one down there? And the week after that, the Cub Scouts. And the week after that, the Cadets. And I just wonder if we're opening Pandora's box here, and I wonder how we're going to work collectively as a group to mitigate or message this.
Yeah, please, staff.
It's a valid question. It's not something we've determined an answer for yet. I would open it to the group to see if that's a concern and if you have ideas for how we would handle that.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think
I'm sorry.
I may have the answer to that question. When this report came forward, one of the things that really struck me about it, and correct me if I misremember it, but the plan was to share the proceeds from this bin with a number of other schools. It wasn't, I just thought it was very innovative that they recognized that, of course, every school has the same issue. They're trying to make money. And when this first came forward, I was very impressed that they had determined to share the revenue amongst all the schools in Colwood. So I think that kind of addresses the issue. I'm sure if the staff may have other input on that, but I thought that was very forward-thinking of the proponents who brought it forward to not just say, first come, first serve, but we're all here for all our kids.
Councillor Parkinson?
Actually, my recollection is a little different than Councillor Day's. I thought their argument was that other schools did have bottle collections on site, and for some reason they couldn't do it at Sangster School. But I could be wrong. But here's my concern. I'm a huge proponent of collecting bottles and not taking them back yourself, because I hate taking bottles back. So, you know, I have organized within our apartment building for the last several years the collection of bottles and getting somebody to come and pick them up and take them away. I support collecting bottles at the beach. I'm very happy let Sangster School take the lead on it. But sometimes these things peter out after a while, you know, finding that somebody who's going to go on the Saturday morning or this, or that there's going to be people who go help themselves. So I guess I'm reluctant to spend $3,000 to pretty it up until we know if it's going to work or not. I would say let's let them put it down there. Yeah, it might be a little unsightly, but, you know, those porta potties have never won any architectural awards either. So I would say let's put it down there. Let's hold off on the fencing until we have a track record that makes us more comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Our communications officer.
If I can just clarify, this screening is actually for the porta potties, and the idea was that we would just tuck that recycling bin in with it as a bonus, so that it wasn't standing out there looking how it looks.
Marcy, do we have a motion? Like a mover and a seconder already? We do. Okay. So we already have a mover and seconder. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
That was a good restraint. I appreciated the restraint until the end. 8.7, Government Financial Officer Association Canadian Award for Financial Reporting. The Government Financial Officers Association of the United States and Canada Award, Canadian Award to the City of Colwood for the annual report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017. The Canadian Award for Financial Reporting Program was established to encourage municipal governments throughout Canada to publish high-quality financial reports and to provide peer recognition and technical guidance for officials preparing these reports. In order to award a Canadian Award for Financial Reporting, a government organization must publish an easily readable and effective organized annual financial report whose contents conform to program standards. Such reports should go beyond the minimum requirements of generally accepted accounting principles and demonstrate an effort to clearly communicate the municipal government's financial picture, enhance an understanding of financial reporting by municipal governments, and address user needs. Canadian Award Financial Reporting is valid for a period of 1 year only. We believe our current report continues to conform to the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting Program requirements, and we will be resubmitting this annual report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018 to this organization to determine its eligibility for another award. So well done. I don't need to receive that or anything, do I? Okay. Moving on then, we're now into bylaws.
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Did
I miss something?
There's a report in mine, and it's Appendix 2. It's about the location for Beach Food Fridays and Saturdays.
Oh, hold on, sorry. Give me 2
It's
seconds
on
here.
page 175.
That was just an addendum to the...
Oh, was it? Okay. All right. Sorry.
No, that's good. No, I'm glad you checked. Bylaws. 9.1, bylaw number 1773, Main Sewer LSA Enlargement 3432 Fulton Road. Final reading.
Final.
Move
Second.
Councillor Logan, Councillor Baxter. All the discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 9.2, bylaw number 1774, West Sewer LSA 3432 Fulton.
Move final.
Moved by Baxter, seconded by Kobayashi. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 9.3, bylaw number 1700-01, Officers Bylaw Amendment, first, second, and third reading.
Move in first.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan on first. All those in favor? Opposed? Move second. I have the same mover and seconder. Discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Move third. Same mover and seconder. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 9.4, bylaw number 1775, main sewer LSA 600 Langholm Drive, first, second, and third reading. Councillor Kobayashi and Councillor Jensen as the seconder. All those in favor for first? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to second reading, we have the same mover and seconder. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move third. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 9.5, bylaw number 1776, Central Sewer LSA 600 Langholm Drive, first, second, third reading. Mover.
Move introduction.
Thank you. Move Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to second reading, same mover and seconder. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Third reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And now we need to move back into in camera. So a motion to close the meeting to the public. So moved. Thank you, Councillor.
Second.
All those in favor?